brother.
Thank you for joining us for it's live with Jesse and Melva. We're so glad that you're with us today. And we're excited about what we're going to be sharing with you. We've been doing a series over the past couple sessions. And so this is going to be our third in a series of 3. So we want to let you know what we're going to be covering tonight or this time. So we have shared stories of 2 different couples with 2 different challenges that they successfully overcame. This time, we're going to share the story of how another couple overcame a challenge in a totally different kind of situation. Actually, I should say it's the third example. Jesse's going to take you through a reflective guided imagery. And then, actually, the question that we're answering is part of the question that the couple asked us a while back, if we were going to address anything about what people were dealing with in spending so much time together during the restrictions and the shutdown. Now, even though people are coming back to life as usual, well, in the new normal, establishing a new normal, they still are dealing with issues that were magnified when they were spending so much time together under the same roof. And then we're going to provide a link for a complimentary consultation. We're going to be supporting some couples over the next few weeks or so. Actually, we don't know how long we're going to do it, but we're going to do it for a while.
Right.
Because we want to support couples to take that one action step that's going to support them to be more successful in one area of life that they would like to be more successful in. So let's get started. So I shared that we had talked about 2 different couples and the challenges that they were facing. So the first couple was Aaron and Annie. And so we told their story about how they argued all the time, and they just couldn't get through the arguments. And then we shared, until they went through the 3-step process, following the 3 fundamentals of safety, understanding, and compassion, they were able to turn it around. Then we shared a story of Baxter and Brenda. Now, Baxter and Brenda had a different situation. They were afraid to talk about sensitive situations. And so we went through a process where we showed how we supported them to turn that around so that they could create a safe space within to get safe, to get clear, and to have the conversation in a successful way. This time, so let's review the 3 fundamentals again. So the first fundamental is what, Jesse?
The first fundamental is to being safe. And that's so very important in terms of communicating, that both persons feel safe in their communicating.
That means no criticism, no judgments, no put down.
Right.
Totally present, totally focused on the big picture. And that's having an effective experience together, communicating. Communicating meaning 2 ways: expressing responsibly and listening attentively. What's fundamental number 2?
Number 2 is be understanding. Being aware of the fact that most likely on many things, both of you have different ideas and ways of seeing the world and so on. And so being understanding means you got to step outside of your shoes into your partner's shoes and look at the world and help to interpret and understand them from where they're coming from. So it means suspending for right now your own judgments and being present for your partner.
Yeah. And what's number 3?
Number 3 is being compassionate. It's one thing to understand. It's also another thing to be compassionate for what you understand. And that is extremely important, so that both of you feel like you're valuable, your ideas are important, that what you're feeling is important, and what you're striving to achieve is also important for both you and your partner.
Right, right. So with that review in mind, and you'll probably notice that we'll be using these fundamentals over and over again. Actually, we have a whole lot more because we know that we studied successful people over all these 4 decades. And so, and we applied a lot of what we learned to our own lives personally and professionally. So we also teach these principles in our counseling office, in our workshops, and in our coaching. As a matter of fact, we are spending more time focusing on the success principles of getting the results that people want in their lives. People come into our lives because they want support with whatever challenge they're having. And so while we address that, we also support couples to have a shift in their mindset and a shift in their skill set,
Right.
so that they can, first of all, get clear about what they want, what
Mhm.
success looks like for them. And then we support them to navigate the valley of change to get where they want to get. Most people, when we talk to most people, and we ask them what it is they want to be successful in their lives, they tell us what they don't want. They don't know what they want. I mean, I remember when we first got married, and Jesse and I would have a difference of opinion and energetic conversation. Excuse me. And I remember the times that he would ask me what I wanted. Well, since I never had it, I didn't know. And then I was annoyed at him because he didn't know. So anyway, so we really are focusing on helping people to be more successful in their lives. And the principles that we live by and teach are principles that apply to relationships in love, marriage, and life. So let's talk about our third example today, this time. And this is a story that is connected to developing the mindset and skill set for more success. So right now we had called them Beatitudes, but we're thinking more that the Beatitudes really are elements of success. So we're focusing on changing a mindset and a skill set that is more in alignment with successfully getting the results that you want. And success means different things to different people. So we help people to get clear about what that is. So this story is about a couple named George and Grace. So what we want you to know about George and Grace is that they're a couple that's been married for about 10 years. They have 2 children under the age of 5. Grace is a stay-at-home mom, part-time, and then she has a part-time job. But during the shutdown, she became a full-time mom and wife. So she took care of the home and the children full-time. So she turned into the teacher and everything else that she wasn't before the shutdown. Now, George is a police officer, and he has been working additional hours because, number one, he's been needed, and number two, because there are other police officers in his unit who are recovering from the virus. So now, none of them passed away. However, Grace and George are dealing with the loss of 2 people who did pass away. One was his grandmother, and the other one was her favorite uncle. They were devastated. She wanted to talk about it. He did not. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons why he didn't want to talk about it was because he didn't know how. And the other reason is because how are men usually programmed to deal with grief?
Oh, well,
in general, how are men usually?
we push it down, we push it away, and that's the way we have learned as men to deal with things that are difficult like that. We just don't deal with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they went through the experience of not having, only having the loss, but they could not go to the service afterwards. They couldn't pay their last respects. So that added even more pain
Right.
to their loss and the grief of their loss. Now, Grace wanted to talk about it, but actually she didn't know how either. So if Grace and George, if they were a couple coming to see us, we would support them through, number one, understand what was going on with both of them. Now, both of them were going through the same thing, grief. They were grieving a loss of two important people in their lives. And so they didn't know anything about the stages of grief and how to address them. So the first thing that it was important for them to know, they needed to know what the stages of grief are. They needed to know what they were dealing with. That was going to create safety for them to understand that, number one, there wasn't anything wrong with them because they were having all of these feelings. And number two, that they could create a safe haven within to create clarity about what was going on within and what kind of support they needed to navigate through it and communicate that with each other. The second thing that was important was that they not only had understanding of their own experience, but they had understanding of the other person's experience, because it was quite different. It was the same issue, but they experienced it differently. And people need to have their experience heard and understood and validated.
Right.
Validated meaning people need to have their experiences understood. They need someone who's important to them to say, what you are experiencing makes sense. I have crossed the bridge over to your world. I'm following your experience and what it's been like for you. Wow, it makes sense that you would feel the way that you feel. And that naturally leads to compassion. So here's what we did first and would do first with a couple like George and Grace, who are going through grief and loss. And whether it's the death of a loved one, whether it's a health challenge, because there's a loss of functioning that the person had before, whether it's the loss of feeling secure in a job, whether it's a loss of a friendship, loss is loss. And the brain experiences it and interprets it the same way. Now, that's not to take away from the impact of the loss. I'm just saying that the way that the brain addresses it, that it has a impact on the person, and they need to be able to get clear about it and be able to talk about it in a way that the other person can hear it, and so they can get support. Okay, so here's the stages. And not when people go through these stages, they go back and forth. So we're gonna share them one by one, and then Jesse's gonna take you through a guided imagery to tap into giving support if you've had any loss in any area of your life. Okay, so the first stage is denial. So denial is like a sense of disbelief. It's like, I can't believe this just happened. It could be your health, it could be the death of a loved one, but there's a sense of shock that a person goes into. The second one is an emotional release, that it seems like all of a sudden, all of these emotions are activated and the person is flooded with all of these emotions, overwhelmed with all of these emotions. That is normal. The other part is, and this is the part that most people are familiar with, and that's the stage of anger because of that loss. And so underneath that feeling of anger is also possibly a feeling of powerlessness and hopelessness because you don't know what to do about it. I mean, you're in a no-win situation in that moment. That is also normal, and it is to be acknowledged. The fourth stage is bargaining. So it's almost like talking to God and saying, God, well, maybe if I don't do such and such never again, then maybe I can get back what was lost. Now, I didn't say all the steps were rational. All the steps are emotional components of what people go through when they go through grief. And then the next step is depression. So sometimes people have a sense of sadness for 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks or more. And know that that is part of the process. And you don't have to stay in that stage of depression and sadness. That help is available. And it is also part of the process. You just don't want to stay there. You want to acknowledge it and not stay there. And then there's experience of remorse. And what is that? Becoming preoccupied with thoughts like, maybe if I had done this, I would not have had that loss. Maybe if I had done that, things would be different. That is part of the processing stage. And then number 7 is the stage of acceptance. And that is, it really did happen. I really don't have this person in my life. I really don't have this aspect of health in my life. This is the reality. And I'm going to be with the reality of it for as long as I need to. And here's the good news. That is stage 8. And that's the stage of hope. It's like the remembering, because you navigated all the stages, you have acknowledged them, you've validated them for yourself, somebody that you love and care about, or someone who is supporting you has walked through that valley with you and helped you to go through those stages. It's at that point that the person begins to look toward the future. The reality of what is, or what was, is still a reality. And at the same time, there is space and an opportunity to be hopeful for, I am here now. What do I want? And how can I get there? And it doesn't mean that you no longer think about what was lost. You still honor that and begin to move forward. So those are the stages that Grace and George went through. So that was the safety aspect of it. That was the understanding part of it. And when they had, it made a difference. So let's give you some more information about what they did to grieve together. So the first thing they did, I think there's a slide. The first thing they did was they created a safe space. And we talked about a safe space before in terms of how a person goes within to create a safe haven to experience what they're experiencing and get clear about what it is that they want to share and to do it more effectively. And then the second thing they did was that
they discovered how to make sense of each other's experience and vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So that was also important for them because all of these are really learning opportunities for personal growth. And so when you learn to get safe and spend time alone and hearing the still small voice inside you, and then you move toward understanding of the other person's reality and what they're going through, it can be a tremendous boost to you in terms of your life.
Yeah. And the third thing in navigating that experience together, that painful experience together, not only did they have more compassion with each other, they deepened their bond. it was another element of intimacy between the two of them. And there are so many levels of intimacy. And you know, what I find interesting is that when we use the word intimacy, the first thing that comes to most people's mind is sex. Now, sex is important and it's one element. You know, there's spiritual intimacy, um, there's even conversational intimacy, physical intimacy, non-sexual touch, as well as sexual touch. There's many, many aspects of intimacy. And so they began to energize more and more aspects of intimacy in their lives. So in terms of the steps that George and Grace went through, I think Greg and Grace went through, I think this is a point where we can take you through a guided imagery. Because if you've had loss in any aspect of your life, we want to introduce you to the soothing process of these 8 steps. And so Jesse is going to take you through that now.
So if you're experiencing any kind of loss, we'd like for you to join us in this guided imagery. And we know that whenever a person, whatever a person is facing in life challenges, how important it is to have information. This guided imagery is designed to provide information and an experience of a healthy way to grieve. It includes the steps that Greg and Grace implemented to continue to implement in grieving the loss of their loved one. So think of a loss that may include maybe the death of a loved one, or a relationship breakup, or the loss of a job, or the loss of some aspect of one's health. We invite you to just be aware and breathe through each of these 8 steps. Some you may have already experienced and others may be new. All are supportive and important to be aware of. In the loss you're focusing on right now, you may have experienced, number 1, denial. This means not really believing that the loss has actually happened. This is normal. Breathe into these feelings. Number 2, once you realize the reality and the impact of that loss, you may have felt an emotional release, and that is normal. So you'll want to breathe into these feelings as well. And number 3, then there are feelings of anger. Just know that beneath that anger may be a feeling of powerlessness and unfairly deprived of something that you will have lost and that you miss in that relationship. And that's also normal. So you want to breathe into these feelings. 4, there's a stage of bargaining, meaning making promises to change in hope that breaking back what was lost is that you will be able to retrieve whatever those feelings were that you've lost in this. So you bargain to try to get them back. You may have reported being preoccupied with thoughts about how the loss could have been prevented. This is a feeling of remorse. And those feelings are also normal. So you want to breathe into that. 7, the next important stage is facing the reality of the loss. It's called acceptance, and that is normal. Breathe into this. And finally, there is a sense of hope. In other words, remembering becomes less painful and the person begins to look ahead to the future. and this is normal. So you want to breathe into that. Now, take a moment, close your eyes, and feel a bright, soothing, comforting white light circling through you, permeating through you, and pouring out of you, soothing you, comforting you, healing you, and uplifting you. Take a few moments to breathe into that. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.
And just take a moment and be present with your feelings. This is a process of acknowledgement. And Greg and Grace had a third party that helped them to go through the steps until they could go through them on their own. So what we're saying is, if you're feeling any kind of loss, you are not alone and you don't have to be alone. There are people who are available to support you.
Right.
And what we want you to know is that the complimentary consultation that we're offering, if any of you are feeling a sense of loss, we can go through the consultation with you. And well, this was supposed to be like Greg and Grace. But anyway, to help you to get a jump start on beginning to use this process. At www.jesseandmelva.com. So when you go to that website, there's a contact page, and just put your name and your email in there, and we will respond, and we'll set up a time to talk that is convenient for you and convenient for us. So we want to thank you again for being a part of Live, excuse me, with Jesse and Melva. And we also want to say to you that these 3 stories that we shared with you are related to different aspects of how to be successful in love, marriage, and life, no matter what you're going through.
Right.
Conflict is growth trying to happen. Grief is growth trying to happen. Any of the challenges that you have in that in life, just know that there's something inside of you that is saying it's time to grow. It's time to be bigger in life. It's time to be on purpose. And so we want to support all of you to, first of all, know what your purpose is, and to get focused on it, and to align a mindset and a skill set that's going to support you to actualize your purpose and to be your best self in every area of your life. Until next time, take care.